You know what the most powerful weapon in your arsenal is. It's not your voice. It's not your network. It's not even your talent. It's something far more potent, far more transformative, and it's something that most people are terrified of. It's silence. And today, I'm going to tell you about a woman who turned silence into her superpower, who weaponized quiet in a world that demands constant noise, who built an empire not by shouting the loudest, but by knowing exactly when to speak and when to stay absolutely, strategically silent. Her name is Priyanka Chopra Jonas, and whether you know her from Bollywood, from Hollywood, from the music charts, or from the global stage, one thing is certain: she understands something that most of us are still learning. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power. Let me ask you something right now. When was the last time you sat in complete silence? When was the last time you resisted the urge to defend yourself, to explain yourself, to justify your choices to people who don't even matter? When was the last time you held your tongue when every fiber of your being wanted to scream, to argue, to prove your point? Most of us can't remember because we live in a world that has trained us to fear silence. We fill every moment with noise, with chatter, with endless scrolling, with constant validation seeking. We've been conditioned to believe that if we're not speaking, we're not being heard. If we're not defending ourselves, we're admitting defeat. If we're not constantly proving our worth, we're worthless. But what if I told you that the opposite is true? What if the most successful people in the world, people like Priyanka Chopra, have figured out that real power doesn't come from having the last word. It comes from knowing when not to speak at all. Priyanka Chopra's story is not a fairy tale. It's not a story of overnight success or lucky breaks. It's a story of a woman who was told no 1,000 times, who was called too dark, too ethnic, too foreign, too bold, too ambitious, who was reduced to stereotypes and told she'd never make it beyond Bollywood, who faced rejection after rejection in Hollywood and was offered roles that were nothing more than tokenism. And through it all, do you know what she did? She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She didn't waste her energy trying to convince people of her worth. She stayed silent. She kept working, and she let her results do the talking. That's the first lesson of silence as power. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your work will speak louder than your words ever could. Think about this for a moment. We live in the age of social media, where everyone has a platform, where everyone feels entitled to an opinion about your life. Someone criticizes your appearance. You feel compelled to defend it. Someone questions your choices. You write a paragraph explaining yourself. Someone spreads a rumor. You rush to correct it. And in doing so, you give away your power. You hand it over on a silver platter because every time you react, you're showing them that their words have weight, that their opinions matter, that they can pull your strings like a puppet. Priyanka learned early in her career that the more you explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, the more energy you waste. She learned that silence in the face of criticism is not acceptance. It's sovereignty. I'll give you a perfect example. When Priyanka first started making waves in Hollywood, the criticism was relentless. People said she was just another Bollywood actress trying to cross over. They said she'd gotten her roles because of her looks, not her talent. They questioned her accent, her choices, her right to be in those rooms. And what did Priyanka do? She didn't go on a media tour defending herself. She didn't write angry tweets or post long Instagram captions. She showed up at award shows. She landed role after role. She produced content. She built businesses. She became a global icon. She let her silence do the heavy lifting. And eventually the critics had nothing left to say because her success spoke louder than their doubt ever could. Now, I want to be clear about something. When I talk about silence as power, I'm not talking about being passive. I'm not talking about accepting disrespect or tolerating injustice. I'm talking about strategic silence. I'm talking about the kind of silence that comes from deep confidence, from knowing your worth so completely that you don't need external validation. I'm talking about the silence that allows you to observe, to learn, to strategize, to move with intention instead of reaction. Priyanka Chopra is not a quiet woman. She's vocal about issues she cares about. She's an advocate for education and women's rights. She speaks her truth when it matters. But she's also mastered the art of not wasting her words on battles that don't deserve her energy. And that distinction, that discernment, is what separates powerful people from powerless people. Let me take you back to Priyanka's early days. She won Miss World at 17. 17 years old. And suddenly the entire world was watching her. She had opportunities, she had fame, she had everything that most people dream of. But she also had something else, expectations. Everyone had an opinion about what she should do next, how she should behave, what roles she should take, what kind of person she should be. And in those early years, like many young people thrust into the spotlight, she tried to please everyone. She took roles that weren't right for her. She said yes when she should have said no. She spread herself thin trying to live up to everyone else's vision of who Priyanka Chopra should be. And you know what happened? She lost herself. She became exhausted, burned out, frustrated. Because when you're trying to be everything to everyone, you become nothing to yourself. So she made a decision. She decided to get quiet. Not in her career, but in her mind. She started practicing silence as a form of self-preservation and self-discovery. She stopped listening to the noise around her and started listening to the voice within her. She started saying no to projects that didn't align with her vision. She started walking away from conversations that drained her energy. She started protecting her peace like it was her most valuable asset, because it is. And that's when everything changed. That's when she started making choices that were authentically hers. That's when she started building a career that wasn't just successful, but meaningful. That's when she started becoming the Priyanka Chopra that we know today. This is something I want you to really absorb. Silence creates space, space for clarity, space for growth, space for the right opportunities to find you. When you're constantly talking, constantly reacting, constantly engaging with every piece of noise that comes your way, you're operating from a place of chaos. But when you cultivate silence, when you create pockets of quiet in your life, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You can see the bigger picture. You can hear your intuition. You can make decisions from a place of wisdom instead of emotion. Priyanka has talked about this in interviews. She's said that some of her best decisions came from moments of stillness, from times when she unplugged from the world and reconnected with herself. Because the truth is, you can't hear your own voice when you're drowning in everyone else's. Now let's talk about rejection, because if there's one thing Priyanka Chopra knows about, it's rejection. And if there's one thing she's mastered, it's how to handle rejection with grace and silence. When she first tried to break into Hollywood, the doors weren't just closed, they were locked, bolted, and barricaded. She went to meeting after meeting where she was told she wasn't right, wasn't what they were looking for, wasn't American enough. She was offered roles that were stereotypical, demeaning, one-dimensional. Roles like terrorist's wife or exotic sidekick. Roles that reduced her to her ethnicity instead of celebrating her talent. And she could have done what many actors do. She could have taken those roles out of desperation. She could have compromised her vision just to get a foot in the door. But she didn't. She stayed silent about the rejections. She kept working behind the scenes. And she waited for the right opportunity. And this is crucial because we live in a culture that celebrates the grind, the hustle, the constant movement. We're told that if we're not posting about our journey, we're not working hard enough. If we're not talking about our struggles, we're not being authentic. But Priyanka understood something that most people don't. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing visible. Sometimes the most powerful move is to work in silence and let your success make the noise later. She wasn't posting about every audition she didn't get, every meeting that went nowhere, every door that was slammed in her face. She was building, learning, preparing, positioning herself for the moment when the right door would open. And when it finally did, when she landed the role of Alex Parrish in Quantico, she was ready. Not just ready, but over-prepared because she had spent her time in silence wisely. Think about your own life for a second. How much energy do you waste announcing your plans, defending your dreams to people who don't believe in them, seeking approval from people whose opinions don't matter? How much do you give away just so people will understand you, validate you, support you? And what if you took all of that energy and redirected it? What if instead of talking about what you're going to do, you just did it? What if instead of explaining yourself to critics, you focused on proving yourself through results? What if instead of seeking external validation, you built internal confidence so strong that nothing anyone said could shake you? Priyanka has this incredible story about one of her first major interviews in America. She was promoting Quantico, and the interviewer asked her a question that was designed to put her in a box, to make her represent all of Bollywood, all of India, all brown women everywhere. It was one of those questions that no matter how you answer, you lose. And for a moment, she could have gotten defensive. She could have launched into a speech about stereotypes and representation and the need for better questions. But instead, she smiled. She paused, and she gave a response that was gracious, intelligent, and redirected the conversation exactly where she wanted it to go. She didn't take the bait. She didn't get emotional. She stayed in control, because she understood that silence and strategic restraint are forms of power, especially when people are trying to provoke you. This is a skill that will transform your life if you master it. The ability to pause before you react. The ability to let insults roll off your back. The ability to not give people the reaction they're fishing for. Because here's the thing, when someone criticizes you, when someone tries to diminish you, when someone throws shade or spreads rumors, they're doing it for one reason: they want a reaction. They want you to engage. They want to pull you down to their level. They want to see you rattled, defensive, emotional. And the moment you give them that reaction, they win. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to play their game, when you keep your composure and continue building your empire, you win. Not just the battle, but the war. Priyanka has faced tabloid drama. She's dealt with rumors about her relationships, about her career choices, about everything from her skin tone to her marriage. And yes, there have been times when she's addressed things directly, but those moments are rare and calculated. Most of the time, she lets the noise exist in the background while she keeps moving forward. She doesn't give energy to things that don't deserve it. And that's a level of maturity and wisdom that takes years to develop. Because when you're young, when you're still seeking validation, every criticism feels like an attack. Every rumor feels like it needs to be corrected. Every misunderstanding feels like an emergency. But as you grow, as you become more secure in yourself, you realize that most things don't require a response. Most battles aren't worth fighting. Most people aren't worth your energy. Let me tell you about another aspect of silence that Priyanka embodies beautifully: the power of listening. We live in a world where everyone wants to talk, but nobody wants to listen. Everyone wants to be heard, but nobody wants to truly understand. And the people who succeed, the people who build real influence and impact, are the ones who master the art of listening. Priyanka has talked about how much she's learned from simply observing, from being in rooms with successful people, and keeping her mouth shut and her ears open. When she first got to Hollywood, she didn't come in trying to tell everyone how it should be done. She watched. She learned the culture, the business, the unspoken rules. She asked questions, she absorbed. And then when she had something valuable to contribute, she spoke. And people listened because she had earned the right to be heard. This is something that young people especially need to understand. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to speak in every meeting. You don't have to prove how smart you are in every conversation. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is sit back, observe, and learn. Because when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you have the opportunity to learn something new. Priyanka's success in multiple industries, Bollywood, Hollywood, music, business, philanthropy, didn't happen by accident. It happened because she was willing to be a student of every field she entered. She was willing to not know everything and to learn from people around her. And that humility, that willingness to be silent and absorb, is what allowed her to excel in every space she entered. Now let's talk about something that I think is absolutely critical in today's world: the silence that comes from self-awareness. Priyanka Chopra is brutally honest with herself. She knows her strengths, she knows her weaknesses, she knows what she brings to the table, and she knows where she needs to grow. And that level of self-awareness only comes from quiet introspection. It comes from those moments when you're alone with your thoughts, when you're not performing for anyone, when you're not putting on a brave face. It comes from journaling, from meditation, from therapy, from long walks where you're just processing your life. It comes from silence. Most people are afraid of that kind of silence. They're afraid of what they'll find when they really look at themselves. So they stay busy, they stay distracted, they fill every quiet moment with podcasts and music and social media and noise, noise, noise. But successful people, people like Priyanka, they seek out that silence because they know it's where real growth happens. They know that you can't improve what you're not willing to examine. They know that you can't heal what you're not willing to feel. They know that personal evolution requires brutal honesty with yourself, and that honesty can only happen in silence. Priyanka has been open about her struggles with self-doubt, with insecurity, with the pressure of constantly being in the public eye. She's talked about moments of darkness, moments when she questioned everything, moments when the weight of expectations felt crushing. But she didn't run from those moments. She didn't bury them under more work or more distractions. She sat with them. She processed them. She worked through them in the quiet spaces of her life. And that's why she's able to stand on stages around the world with such confidence and authenticity. Because she's done the inner work. She's faced her demons in silence, and she's emerged stronger. I want you to think about your relationship with silence. Are you comfortable being alone with yourself? Can you sit in a room with no phone, no TV, no distractions, and just be? Or does that terrify you? Because if it terrifies you, that's a sign. That's a sign that there's work to be done, conversations you need to have with yourself, truths you need to face, and healing you need to pursue. And the only way to do that work is to embrace silence as a tool for self-discovery and growth. Let's shift gears and talk about silence in relationships, because this is an area where Priyanka has demonstrated incredible wisdom. Whether it's her relationship with Nick Jonas, or her friendships, or her family dynamics, she understands that not everything needs to be shared with the world. In the age of social media, where people live, stream their entire lives, where every meal is a photo op and every emotion is a status update, Priyanka has managed to maintain boundaries. Yes, she shares glimpses of her life. Yes, she posts about her husband and her family and her experiences. But she's strategic about it. She keeps the most precious parts of her life private. She doesn't feel the need to prove her relationship to anyone. She doesn't respond to every rumor or speculation. She protects what's sacred by keeping it silent. And this is something that's so important in the modern world. Your relationship doesn't need to be performed for validation. Your love doesn't need to be broadcast for likes. Your happiness doesn't need to be posted for approval. In fact, some of the strongest, healthiest relationships are the ones that exist mostly offline, in the quiet moments that nobody sees. Priyanka and Nick could plaster their relationship all over social media, but they don't. They share what feels right to them, and they keep the rest sacred. And that's a form of power, the power to not need external validation for your personal life. The power to let your relationship exist in its own beautiful, private space. This applies to all relationships. How many friendships have been destroyed because people can't keep things private? How many family dynamics are complicated by the need to air everything on social media? How much drama is created because people don't understand that some things are meant to be held in silence? Priyanka understands this deeply. She has a tight circle of people she trusts, and what happens in that circle stays in that circle. She doesn't gossip, she doesn't spill secrets, she doesn't throw people under the bus for clout. And that's why people trust her. That's why she's able to build genuine, lasting relationships in an industry that's notoriously superficial. Think about the power of being known as someone who can keep a secret, who can be trusted, who doesn't need to broadcast everything. That's currency in relationships. That's how you build real trust and loyalty. People will tell you things they'd never tell anyone else because they know it's safe with you. They'll support you in ways they wouldn't support others because they know you value discretion. And in a world where everyone is looking for their moment of attention, being the person who doesn't need the spotlight is actually what makes you shine the brightest. Now, I want to talk about a concept that I think Priyanka Chopra embodies perfectly: strategic ambiguity. There are times when being vague, when not showing all your cards, when keeping people guessing, is the smartest move you can make. In business negotiations, in career moves, in personal decisions, maintaining a level of mystery and silence can work in your favor. Priyanka doesn't announce every project she's working on. She doesn't reveal every plan she has. She keeps things close to her chest until the right moment. And then, when she's ready, when everything is in place, she makes her move. And it's always bigger, bolder, and more impressive than anyone expected because they didn't see it coming. This is a lesson from warfare, from chess, from any strategic endeavor. You don't announce your next move to your opponent. You don't reveal your hand before you're ready to play it. In your career, this means not telling everyone about your job interviews until you've signed the contract, not announcing your business idea until you've launched it, not sharing your goals with people who don't support you. Because the truth is, not everyone wants to see you succeed. Some people will sabotage you, consciously or unconsciously. Some people will steal your ideas. Some people will talk you out of your dreams because they're threatened by your ambition. So you learn to move in silence. You learn to work behind the scenes. You learn to keep your plans between you and the people who absolutely need to know. Priyanka's move from Bollywood to Hollywood wasn't announced with a grand statement. She didn't hold a press conference saying she was going to conquer America. She quietly started taking meetings, quietly built relationships, quietly positioned herself. And then, when Quantico was announced, everyone was shocked. Where did this come from? How did this happen? But for Priyanka, it had been in the works for years, happening in silence, in strategy, in careful planning. That's how you make big moves. Not with announcements and proclamations, but with quiet, consistent action that leads to undeniable results. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a point in Priyanka's career where she was at a crossroads. She had achieved everything there was to achieve in Bollywood. She was at the top of her game. She could have coasted on that success for the rest of her life. But she wanted more. She wanted to challenge herself, to step into unknown territory, to build something bigger. And everyone around her had opinions. Some people said she was making a mistake leaving Bollywood at the peak of her career. Some people said she'd never make it in Hollywood. Some people said she should stick to what she knows. And she listened to all of it. She heard everyone's concerns, everyone's doubts, everyone's advice. And then, in the quiet of her own mind, she made her decision. She didn't argue with the doubters. She didn't try to convince anyone. She just moved forward with her plan, in silence, with conviction. And you know what happened? The people who doubted her, the people who said it couldn't be done, they're now celebrating her success as if they always believed in her. That's the funny thing about success. When you achieve it, everyone wants to claim they supported you from the beginning. But the truth is, most people don't support your dreams until they're proven right. So you can't wait for their approval. You can't let their doubt stop you. You have to be willing to move forward in silence, driven by your own belief, your own vision, your own determination. And when you succeed, and you will, if you stay focused, the same people who questioned you will become your biggest fans. That's just how it works. This brings me to another crucial point: silence as emotional intelligence. Priyanka has an incredibly high level of emotional intelligence. She can read a room, she can understand people's motivations, she can navigate complex social dynamics with grace. And a big part of that is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. She doesn't impulsively react to things. She doesn't let her emotions control her responses. She takes a moment, she assesses the situation, and then she responds in a way that serves her best interests. That's maturity. That's wisdom. That's power. Most people struggle with this. Most people are reactive. Someone says something offensive, they immediately clap back. Someone criticizes them, they immediately defend themselves. Someone challenges them, they immediately go on the attack. And in doing so, they give away their power. They show their hand. They reveal their weaknesses. But when you develop the discipline to pause, to breathe, to choose your response instead of reacting impulsively, you maintain control. You stay in the driver's seat. You don't let other people dictate your emotions or your actions. And that's a level of self-mastery that will change your life. Priyanka has been in situations where she could have easily lost her cool. She's been asked inappropriate questions in interviews. She's been disrespected by people who should have known better. She's been underestimated and stereotyped and put in boxes that were far too small for her. And in almost every instance, she's responded with grace. Not because she's a pushover, but because she's strategic. She knows that losing her composure gives the other person exactly what they want. She knows that staying calm, staying composed, staying silent when necessary is what keeps her in control. And that's a lesson that will serve you in every area of your life, in your career, in your relationships, in your personal growth. Let's talk about the silence that comes before the storm, the preparation that nobody sees. Priyanka's success looks effortless from the outside, but it's built on years of silent, unglamorous work. The early morning workouts when nobody's watching, the hours of script reading and character study, the language lessons and accent training, the business meetings and contract negotiations, the failures and setbacks that she dealt with privately. All of this happened in silence, behind closed doors, away from the cameras and the applause. And that's the reality of success. What you see on stage, on screen, in the headlines, that's the result. But the process, the real work, that happens in silence. This is why I get frustrated when people say things like, "She's so lucky," or "It must be nice to have it all handed to you." Nobody had anything handed to them, especially not people like Priyanka who had to break through multiple barriers. She's a woman in a male-dominated industry. She's a person of color in spaces that weren't built for her. She's an immigrant navigating a new culture. Every single step of her journey required more effort, more resilience, more determination than people will ever know. And she did most of that work in silence, not looking for sympathy, not seeking pity, not announcing every obstacle she overcame. She just kept her head down and kept working. And that's what I want you to understand. Your success will be determined by what you do in the quiet moments. Not when people are watching, not when you're getting praise, not when things are easy. But in those early mornings, those late nights, those moments of doubt when nobody's around to encourage you. That's when you either rise or fall. That's when you either do the work or make excuses. That's when you either push through or give up. And the people who succeed, they're the ones who show up in those silent moments and do what needs to be done, even when nobody will ever know, even when there's no immediate reward, even when it feels pointless. They trust the process. They trust that the work they do in silence will eventually speak for itself. Priyanka has said in interviews that she's a big believer in preparation meeting opportunity. She talks about how she was preparing for Hollywood long before Hollywood came calling. She was learning about the industry, working on her accent, studying American culture, building her brand. So when the opportunity came, when the door finally opened, she didn't have to scramble to get ready. She was already prepared. She had done the work in silence. And that's a principle that applies to every dream you have. You can't wait until the opportunity shows up to start preparing. You have to be preparing now, in silence and secret, so that when your moment comes, and it will come if you're ready for it, you can seize it with confidence. Think about the areas of your life where you're waiting for an opportunity. Are you preparing for it? Or are you just waiting? Are you doing the work in silence? Or are you wasting time complaining about how the opportunity hasn't come yet? Because here's the brutal truth: opportunities come to those who are ready for them. If you're not getting the opportunities you want, it's probably because you're not ready yet. You haven't done the work. You haven't built the skills. You haven't developed the discipline. And the beautiful thing is, you can start right now. You can start doing the work in silence, building the foundation, preparing yourself so that when your door opens, you're ready to walk through it like you belong there. Now, let's address something important, the difference between silence and suppression. When I talk about the power of silence, I'm not talking about suppressing your truth, about not speaking up against injustice, about tolerating abuse or discrimination. Priyanka is vocal about issues that matter. She uses her platform to advocate for education, for women's rights, for representation. She speaks up when it's important. But she also knows the difference between speaking up for something that matters and reacting to every piece of criticism or negativity that comes her way. That's discernment. That's wisdom. You need to develop that in your own life. You need to know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to fight and when to walk away, when to defend yourself and when to let your results do the talking. Some battles are worth fighting. Some causes deserve your voice. Some injustices require you to stand up and speak out. But not everything deserves your energy. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every argument is worth having. And learning to distinguish between the two, that's maturity. That's power. Priyanka has used her voice powerfully when it comes to representation in media. She's spoken about the lack of diverse stories in Hollywood. She's talked about being offered stereotypical roles. She's called out colorism in the beauty industry. She's been vocal about equal pay and opportunities for women. These are fights worth fighting, and she doesn't stay silent on them. But she also doesn't waste her energy on tabloid gossip or petty drama or people who are just trying to bring her down. She picks her battles wisely, and that's a skill you need to develop if you want to be successful and maintain your sanity. Let me share something personal with you. There was a time in my own life when I felt like I had to respond to everything, every criticism, every doubt, every negative comment. I felt like if I didn't defend myself, people would think I was weak. If I didn't explain myself, people would misunderstand me. If I didn't prove my worth constantly, people would forget about me. And it was exhausting. It was draining. It was stealing my peace and my productivity. And then I learned about this concept of strategic silence, and it changed everything. I started asking myself, does this deserve my energy? Will this matter in a year? Is this person's opinion actually relevant to my life? And most of the time, the answer was no. So I started staying silent. I started focusing on my work instead of defending it. I started building instead of arguing. And you know what happened? Everything got better. My work improved because I had more energy for it. My mental health improved because I wasn't constantly in fight mode. And ironically, people started respecting me more because I wasn't reactive anymore. That's the paradox of silence. When you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone, when you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, when you stop giving energy to things that don't matter, people start taking you more seriously. They start seeing you as confident, as secure, as powerful. Because real power doesn't need to announce itself. Real confidence doesn't need constant validation. Real success speaks for itself. Priyanka embodies this completely. She doesn't need to tell you she's successful. You can see it. She doesn't need to prove she's talented. Her work demonstrates it. She doesn't need to convince you she's confident. Her presence radiates it. That's the power of silence combined with action. That's what happens when you stop talking about what you're going to do and you just do it. That's what happens when you let your life be your message instead of your words. I want to talk about another aspect of silence that I think is incredibly important. The silence of gratitude and reflection. Priyanka has talked about her practice of gratitude, of taking moments to reflect on how far she's come, of acknowledging the blessings in her life. And that kind of reflection requires silence. It requires stepping back from the hustle, from the noise, from the constant striving, and just appreciating where you are. Not in a way that makes you complacent, but in a way that gives you perspective and fills you with energy to keep going. We're so caught up in the next goal, the next achievement, the next milestone, that we forget to appreciate the journey. We forget to celebrate how far we've come. We forget to be grateful for what we have while we're pursuing what we want. And that ingratitude, that constant feeling of not enough, it drains us. It makes success feel hollow even when we achieve it. But when you cultivate moments of silent gratitude, when you take time to reflect and appreciate, you fill yourself with joy and motivation that's sustainable. You remember why you started. You reconnect with your purpose. You find the energy to keep pushing forward. Priyanka's journey from a small town in India to being a global icon is extraordinary, and she knows that. She doesn't take it for granted. She's expressed gratitude for the opportunities she's had, for the people who've supported her, for the experiences that have shaped her. And that gratitude, that recognition of how blessed she is, it keeps her humble. It keeps her grounded. It keeps her connected to her roots even as she reaches for the stars. And that's something we all need. That balance between ambition and gratitude, between striving for more and appreciating what is. And that balance can only be found in the quiet moments of reflection. Let's talk about the silence of patience, because this is something that our generation really struggles with. We want everything now. We want instant success, instant gratification, instant results. We post something on social media, and if it doesn't go viral immediately, we think we've failed. We start a project, and if it doesn't take off right away, we abandon it. We pursue a dream, and if it doesn't manifest quickly, we give up. But Priyanka's story is a story of patience. It's a story of playing the long game. It's a story of working for years in silence before seeing the results. Her Hollywood breakthrough didn't happen overnight. It was years in the making. Years of strategic positioning, of relationship building, of skill development, of waiting for the right opportunity. And during that time, she could have gotten impatient. She could have taken the first offer that came her way, even if it wasn't right. She could have forced things to happen before they were ready, but she didn't. She trusted the timing. She trusted the process. She worked in silence and waited for her moment. And when it came, she was ready. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, but it's also one of the most important. Not everything happens on your timeline. Sometimes you're ready for things that aren't ready for you yet. Sometimes the world needs to catch up to your vision. Sometimes you need to go through certain experiences before you're truly prepared for what you want. And during those waiting periods, you have two choices. You can get frustrated, bitter, and give up, or you can stay patient, stay focused, stay silent, and keep working. The choice is yours, but I can tell you which choice leads to success. Priyanka chose patience. She chose to trust the journey. She chose to keep working even when the results weren't immediately visible. And that's why she's where she is today. Because patience isn't passive. It's not sitting around doing nothing waiting for things to happen. It's active, strategic, determined waiting. It's continuing to work, continuing to grow, continuing to position yourself while you wait for the right moment. And when you approach patience that way, when you combine it with consistent action and strategic silence, you become unstoppable. I want to address something that I think is really important, especially in today's social media age, the silence around your struggles. We've created this culture where everyone is encouraged to share their struggles publicly, to be vulnerable, to put their pain on display. And while there's value in authenticity and connection, there's also danger in oversharing. Not everyone deserves to know about your struggles. Not everyone needs access to your pain. Some things are meant to be processed privately, with trusted friends, with therapists,